first of all, I would invite you to, just come back to yourselves and bring your attention home, and also notice what your motivation for joining this class is. And one of the most fundamental aspects of Buddhist philosophy is that intention really determines everything. It is from our intention that everything manifests. So it's good to just be aware of what that intention might be, and we can also give it a nudge in a beneficial and altruistic direction. So if we're Buddhist, we can connect to the idea of bodhicitta, the idea of developing our own minds and hearts in order not just to wake up ourselves, but also in order to be of the most benefit to the most sentient beings in this world. And if we're not necessarily Buddhist, then just connecting to that altruistic idea of bringing something positive to all the people that we interact with, and taking opportunities such as this to develop our minds and open our hearts so that we can experience greater happiness ourselves, but also bring greater happiness to others. And even if our motivation is simply to work and deal with our own suffering and get some more clarity in our own lives, that's a perfectly good motivation as well. Okay, so usually when I do these things, I have, like I said, I usually teach on some topic at the beginning, and that topic usually kind of comes to me in the days prior to doing this session. And interestingly, not much has popped up. So I think today we can make it more of an question and answer session, because I don't really have a specific topic that I would like to cover. The one thing that I would like to share is so we've kind of touched a little bit about on this in the previous sessions, but so there are like different approaches to the spiritual path, you might say, and even within like different schools of Buddhism, there are bit different emphasis. And within the Gelugpa tradition, the emphasis is very strongly on this this idea of progressive development. So we have this potential, we have this Buddha nature, which is kind of like the seed that can germinate and turn into like a fully developed Buddha. But in the state we're currently in, we have a mind that's full of delusion and affliction. There's a lot of ignorance and craving and hostility that is just driving our behavior and creating all the mess that we find ourselves in. But we have this potential to cultivate over time greater clarity, greater insight, greater understanding, and we can also lessen the afflictions. We can work on our anger, we can work on our attachment and our greed, we can lessen our jealousy over time. And there are these marvelous tools of mind training to really shift our entire worldview and our perspective, and develop the positive inner qualities such as compassion and generosity and patience and so on. But it is really seen as a stepwise and deliberate process. And of course, there is the Lam Rim, the graduated path to enlightenment, where we go through slowly through certain stages on the path, and we like build up our inner resources, and we lessen our ignorance, and then eventually somewhere down the line we will wake up and we will like follow the stages of a bodhisattva and eventually a Buddha. So a lot of work, a lot of confusion to deal with, and we just patiently sit out on the path. But there is another way of viewing the spiritual development as well, and that's maybe more pronounced in the tantric practices in Vajrayana, where there is this idea of taking, they talk about taking the result as the path. So and there we can really recognize that this Buddha potential, our Buddha nature, it is not necessarily something that we create over time, because in fact it isn't even a cost phenomena ultimately, but it's rather what we are already. So it's not like we create a Buddha nature that isn't here already. It's more like we uncover that which is already here. So instead of, if one metaphor would be like the seed that grows slowly over time until it's fully developed, the metaphor would be more of a mirror that's covered with dirt and grime and stuff. And if we just remove that dirt, the mirror is there, shining and clear, and it has actually always been there from the very start. It was just that we were not aware of it, and we were identifying much more with the grime on the mirror than the mirror itself. So, and from that perspective, it can be really helpful to connect with our Buddha nature and our true potential, just right here and now. And in a way, I think if the first way of practice, that's more about the things we have to do and the things we have to cultivate. And sometimes as Westerners, that can get us into a mind that's not helpful, because we are such overachievers and such perfectionists, and we're really rather hard on ourselves for not being good enough, not doing enough, faster, bigger, better, more all the time. So that kind of progressive idea sometimes really can make us tie ourselves into a knot, and that can just then end up causing us to not progress at all, because we're just being stuck in a place that's not very helpful. So for that perspective, I think it's good to sometimes really emphasize, rather just relaxing, releasing, and tuning into that fundamental nature which is already here, and having cultivating a sense of trust in that, which is the fundamental nature of our minds, but it's also the fundamental nature of reality, because there is really ultimately there's really no distinction between the nature of our minds and the nature of reality. They are one and the same. So I think sometimes it's good to just really connect back with that sense of openness, and it's like there's something that has primordially always been there. It's stable, unwavering, and it's kind of like just waiting for us to wake up to it. It has never left us. It can't be created because it's always there, always has been there, it always will be there. It's just kind of waiting for us to come along and discover who we truly are. So I thought I would just lead a short meditation on that theme, and then after that we can just open up to whatever questions or reflections that you might have. And I can say also, just from my personal experience of practice, I haven't been at it for that long. I was I would say I rediscovered the Dharma. That's how I kind of view it, when it was about 25 years almost now, when I happened to read a book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then there was an extremely strong sense of coming back home to something that had been lost. So at least in this life, I've been at it for maybe 25 years or so. So not so long, but during that period, I can kind of see a tendency in my own practice that early on, especially, I guess I was younger, and so then initially it was more about, what can I do? I need to cultivate these things, and I need to get rid of those things, and I need to meditate as much as possible and learn as much as possible. So it's about acquiring lots of tools and knowledge and applying all these marvelous, wonderful techniques that I was learning, and it was extremely encouraging, all of it. I was super enthusiastic, but then so lately in my practice, and this is maybe over the past 5 years, it's actually been less about what I can do and more about what I can stop doing. So the things that I can release, the things that I can let go of, the ways that I can just relax more deeply into my lived experience, and ways that I can more deeply connect to something that I sense strongly is already present within me and within all of us. So maybe at the beginning it was more about fixing and doing, and lately it has been more about relaxing, releasing, and letting go. And having said that, I strongly feel that both these ways are valid ways of practicing, and they're valid in different phases of our lives for different individuals. And yeah, these are the kind of things that we have to experience and figure out for ourselves. But I thought I would I just wanted to present those two kind of paths of the progressive path and like the more immediate resultant path. And certainly in the Gelugpa tradition, it's the former that is more emphasized and taught, at least initially, before you get more into tantric practice potentially. Okay, so having said that, I thought I would lead a short meditation, and then I'll just open up to whatever questions might be there. Okay, so let's start by just finding a comfortable position. And when meditating, the most important thing is to find a position where, the chest is open, so the back is straight. Most of the time, that would be sitting on a cushion or in a chair. But it could definitely be lying down. The supine position is extremely good for meditating, especially if you want to emphasize this aspect of releasing, relaxing, letting go, because your chest will be naturally open and your back will be naturally supported when you lie down. But if you're sitting up, just make sure the back is straight, but at the same time relaxed. So let your shoulders drop down and let your hands rest where it feels comfortable. And then maybe just pay attention to your face. Sometimes we hold a lot of tension in our face, like that little wrinkle between the eyes. So see if you can allow the forehead to become smooth and relaxed. Maybe releasing tensions in the jaw. Just have the sense of like a newborn baby sleeping. That kind of face. And just release everything that is tight. Allowing your attention to drop down into your body, leaving the head, the planning and fixing, worrying. And just see if you can connect with your breathing. Full length of the breath and the physical sensations that are associated with it. Maybe emphasizing the out breath as a way of releasing, letting go, relaxing. So just allow the out breath to flow out, completely leave the body, not holding on to anything. And then just allow the out breath to flow in naturally without forcing, without effort. Breathing out like tipping a glass of water on its side and the water just flowing out. You don't have to force it, just let it happen naturally. And then having settled the breathing, and the body. Then we can turn our attention to our minds. So just this space of mental events, the space in which thoughts arise, inner images, memories, impulses, emotions. But see if you can, instead of placing your attention on these different appearances, see if you can move your attention to the very space in which they appear. Just becoming aware of awareness itself. So if all these thoughts and mental events are like clouds, the space of awareness is like the clear blue open sky. And it is because that clear blue open sky is there that the thoughts can appear. Without that space, there would be no appearances. Just like silence allows for sounds to manifest, the open spaciousness of our minds allows for all manner of appearances to manifest. They arise out of that space and then they fall back into that space. So that awareness, it is what allows everything to appear. It is in fact the sovereign creator of the worlds we inhabit. It's an empty field of creative potential. And if we're able to rest in it and identify more deeply with it, then we will also discover that it is in the nature of love. So just see if you can allow yourself to rest in that space of awareness. Which is the source of all appearances, and which is in the nature of interconnectedness, love, and compassion. And which is never ever tainted or affected by whatever appears in the mind. So it's never touched by anger or fear or jealousy or greed. Just like the clear blue sky is never touched or affected by the rain clouds. And by strengthening our ability to just relax into and rest in this space, we also strengthen our ability to work skillfully with whatever challenges, obstacles, and difficulties that arise. So if we identify with all these problems and afflictions, that makes it very difficult to work skillfully with them. But if we can create this space and openness, and maybe even a sense of loving curiosity, then we can deal much more skillfully with the suffering and the challenges that inevitably will arise. And then we can end this meditation by just releasing all mental effort and just resting. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Just this. And then we can gently open our eyes and return our attention back to each other. Okay. So I'll just open up to whatever questions or reflections, concerns that might be out there.
Hi, I'll go first. last week I found myself angry for the 2 days in a row for the very first time in a very long time. And I don't know where it came from. It just felt like it fell down on top of me. I don't even know where to get to. I don't even know how to think this process through anymore. And I kind of feel like do I need to start over again? Or I don't know. I'm just kind of lost in the whole anger thing because I haven't felt it in so long. It's kind of a little bogged by it. Really freaked me out. It really freaked me out. I don't want to be that person. I don't like that person.
No, no. So was it triggered by something in last week's session, or do you have any sense?
No, it was the acts of an adult, the way an adult treated an athlete at one of the events that I was photographing, and Mama Bear came out.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, the signs of like genuine spiritual practice is unfortunately that we will be just dredging stuff up in a way. I remember I have a daughter who's now 13 years old, and I remember just before she came into our lives, I had this. I was just thinking like, wow, I can't remember the last time I was angry. You know, this spiritual stuff must be working, and you know, I'm probably a really holy person now because you know I haven't been angry for such a long time. And then our daughter was born, and boy, did she show me my anger. You know, like the best teacher ever, just making me really aware that you know there was still anger in me that I needed to deal with. So I guess even though you know something like that can feel like a setback, I think it's probably more a sign of progress in a sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I'll take that.
I'm getting angrier. Yes,
I like that better.
Yeah, because I mean the seed of anger. It's like we've planted all these karmic seeds in our minds, and they're just waiting for the right causes and conditions to like germinating to experience. And I mean, as long as we haven't you know dredged the very bottom of our karmic storehouse, then there's still the potential for anger and the potential for all of the stuff that we don't like. But hopefully you now have ways of relating to that anger when it arises that will allow you to work with it and heal it and understand it. Sometimes the anger is really pointing to something that we're blind to, and something that should be addressed.
That's going to have to take some time. I'm going to have to take some time with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. but I guess the main thing is that we shouldn't be despondent when we feel like we're taking 3 or 4 steps back on our journey. It's more like it's not like a straight line. It's more like a spiral that slowly goes up, and we come like I've been here before. I thought I dealt with this stuff, and then okay, that's good. And then we just come back to that same, feels like we're at the same point again, but actually hopefully the spiral keeps going up, even though we come back to the same kind of patterns and challenges that we thought we had put behind us. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Um, don't be don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Be brave, I guess, with the anger.
Brian, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, Martin. Just following on from Shayla, you know how we talked about last week about the inner voice and being compassionate to ourselves? I think that's a perfect example of when we think that we have kind of got something handled, and then it presents itself again to us, and we're so hard on ourselves. We don't have that compassion to think, but that's okay, this is samsara, I'm not perfect, it's going to pop up. And I think that happens to us with anger. I feel that happens to us when we get either like super anxious or fearful as well, because we think that we're making progress, and then it's like, wow, it's like going back to square one. But and so the first thought that comes to me is, where is your compassion for yourself? And that's how and it's not easy, it is hard. But maybe that's part of the process of, I might not get it right this lifetime, but I think that it's the hardest thing to be. We're compassionate to everyone else that are in our lives or that we care about, and then we have these experiences where we think, oh, what's wrong with you? Why I don't like myself now. And then I think, oh, that's just not compassionate. That's just my thoughts of what Shayla was saying. That's just what I felt.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice. And also, yeah, allowing ourselves to be really supportive of ourselves when suffering arises in whatever form, but also allowing ourselves to maybe be curious about it. It's not necessarily something to get rid of. Maybe it's something to look deeply into and understand, and maybe it's something that can teach us something important. So, and rather than just trying to like distance ourselves from it and push it away, we can approach it with openness, curiosity, and kindness, and that kind of shifts our perspective to it, because suffering does have its benefits. It allows us to develop compassion with ourselves and others who are experiencing the same type of suffering. And it's also the impetus for us to wake up, because without suffering we would just be complacent and waste our precious human potential. So it's kind of like there's this saying about the lotus grows from the mud. So without the mud, there will never be a lotus. So we maybe that can help us shift how we relate to the suffering and the difficulties and the afflictions that arise. So did anything yeah, how did you find that meditation? Did anything regarding like this more progressive approach as opposed to like us in relation to the more like just identifying with who we already and truly are? Does that did that resonate with you at all?
I was having difficulty concentrating today.
Mm.
So yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. Thoughts and distractions. Mm.
Yeah, I feel like it has disrupted my life the past week. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Shayla, are you talking about the anger that you felt has disrupted your life past week? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the anger. Yes. Yeah, it completely set me off tilt. Yeah.
Wow. Is there a way for you to get it resolved at all?
Well, I think just a little more compassion. I've been, very hard on myself, so yeah, Brian was right. I need to be kinder to myself.
I'm wondering if I can get input. Anger is a huge issue for me and has been since day one. And my mother would have been lowered into the grave being angry. She was that kind of gal. Now, for me, I feel like I'm making improvement, but the thing that just is so difficult for me is to not be angry at social injustice and the insanity of politics and the greed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know quite how to handle that one, to say the least. So any input would be much appreciated.
Mm. Yeah, anyone in the group, how do you tackle the political and social injustices?
And Martin, can I just share something that I've tried over the last maybe just 2 months, because I love to know what's going on, and I love history, and history repeats itself, so I always like to sort of be switched on to what's going on in the world. But what I realized is that it can be too overwhelming. So what I've done now is I will check my different news sources in the morning, like BBC, CNN, French news, German news, just to look at the headlines, because I like to be informed. I like to know what's happening in the world, but that's it. I don't really get in depth like I used to, because that would set off triggers and my anger and my frustration. Exactly what you're talking about is you just get sort of sucked into it. And I think you have to kind of police yourself. I don't want to live under a rock and not know what's going on. But at the same time, I think sometimes you have to step back a little bit. And it's difficult, especially when you are inquisitive and you want to be better informed. But I think that yourself, and especially now, it can be so damaging. so I think it's maybe a case of filtering things a little more, and then just, okay, well, that's going on, and I might not be happy about it, but then there's things I have to take care of that I can actually change right now in my own life. You know, sometimes things are just out of your control, and you get sucked into it, and it's exhausting. But that's just what I've tried over the last, month or two, is just to have a brief overview of what's going on, look at the headlines, and then that's it.
To that point, Brian, I used to, like, my morning ritual is coffee, looking at the news, then going through my day. And I noticed, like, the coffee made me really happy. And it was like coffee and reading. And then I would read the news, and suddenly you're like angry, you feel helpless, and you feel so frustrated. And so I have taken the news out of my life, and it in the morning, like I'll do it later on in the evening, kind of like you do the glance. But it's funny because I noticed it altered my morning. It changed the way I saw the rest of the day, not even realizing it. And it made it, I realized how addicted I was to watch it, because I took it all off my phone. And then I got so desperate. Like this morning, I was going through, those apps for next door neighbor. So I'm going through to see like what's going on in my neighborhood, because I needed like some sort of news. But then it got boring, and I'm like, okay, just go read something. Then you'll feel empowered, because the news is never going to make you feel empowered. It's only going to make you feel angry, and it's only going to make you feel frustrated and helpless. So I agree with you. I totally agree with you, Brian.
There are a variety of apps where they have like quotes, like Rumi or Buddha, Shantideva. There's a lot of apps like that. So that's what I've been trying to replace The Guardian with, and the BBC. And I've had some success with that. But it's like, and I'm a retired social worker. So social injustice, seeing it not only on the bigger political realm, but I'm still aware with my colleagues, and I know what the resourcing situation is like. And oh my God. Yeah. So that sort of thing is very hard for me to separate out from. All I can do is hope that through like doing Vajrasattva practice or doing spiritual practices, that somehow, it's hard to see, but my hope at any rate is that this will actually positively impact on all these situations that I can't really directly change.
I think that's a wise approach, and sometimes also if we have the view of karma, then we can kind of change how we relate to all these things that seems to be so terribly wrong with the world, because we are not completely separate from the world that we're experiencing, and in fact all of the things that are causing all these problems, which is ignorance and anger, hatred, greed, I mean, we have the seeds of all of that within us, and it's just this unfortunate interplay of afflictions that causes this mess. So if for one thing, if we want to be angry with something, it should be afflictions. It's not much use being angry with a certain person or a certain group of people, such as politicians. If we should be angry with anything, it's the affliction, the ignorance, the greed, which is actually separate from we can separate the person from from their afflictions, because they also fundamentally have Buddha nature, and it's just been obscured by adventitious afflictions. So maybe maybe viewing it from the perspective of karma, then doing Vajrasattva practice, for example, makes perfect sense, because by doing that purification, we're also having an effect on the situation that seems like we cannot affect, because we can't directly influence it. But I think, in fact, we can affect it by purification practices, for example. I don't know if any of that was helpful. So, Erlanda, you have your hand raised. And you're muted.
Orlando, you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
there we go. Yeah, now I can hear you.
So I'm in the United States. I don't know where everyone else is at, but in the United States, we live in a pretty brutal caste system. And as a Mexican American, I really have no choice of separating myself. I can't separate myself, even if I block everything in the news and I don't look at the news, which I do. Whenever I walk out, I'm still a Mexican. So I can't separate myself from it. But what I do to sustain the anger of the way that people treat me, like, for example, the other day I went to go buy water and I wanted to use the little carts from the supermarket, which is right at the corner, to my apartment. And they asked me to leave my ID behind because, they weren't sure that I was going to bring the cart back. I've been going to that supermarket for a year and I've never had this issue. And so the other day, actually yesterday, I see this white man bring the cart back to the supermarket. And I asked him, did they ask you to leave your ID? And he said, no, but I know them. I've been coming here for over a year. And I said, it's been the same thing for me. Like, there's no difference. The only difference is our skin color and maybe the way that we dress. That's the only difference. And he was like, you shouldn't be offended. And I was like, no, I'll remain offended. I will remain offended until further notice.
Yeah.
I can't separate myself by banishing the news. But what I do to understand my existence and to not suppress it, but to deal with the anger, is I read a lot of social justice theory. So Martin Luther King, and not just a social consciousness, but as prayer. I read him as he was supposed to be read as a prophet, right? Like a religious prophet. So I read him as such, and I take his teachings as prayer. And in the mornings, my morning prayer is the convocation. I forgot his name right now. The man did it for the Obama inauguration, and it's Lord, in memory of all the saints who from their labors rest and in the joy of a new beginning, let us work for the day where black doesn't have to get back, where brown can stick around, where yellow can be mellow, where the red man can get ahead, man, and where white does what is right. Let all those who love justice and do mercy say amen. And I say that every morning. And that helps me stay conscious of my existence, but still very much at peace with it. So I don't know if that helps. And I know it's not Buddhist. It might not be Buddhist. So I apologize.
Well, there's wisdom in traditions other than Buddhist, for sure.
I think Buddha would approve, my opinion anyway.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, it's if you're a marginalized minority, if you're black, if you're brown, of course, how could you not be angry? I mean, the magnitude of the injustice is just mind-boggling, and then that's just a fact. so the anger is, I mean, it's completely understandable. How could you not be angry when you're being treated the way that you are? But I think the important thing is to, because there's like a difference between anger, hatred, aggression, and maybe you could call it wrath. So I mean, if you look at the Buddhist deities, you have these wrathful manifestations and expressions where, you know, it's blood and gore and it looks very violent, but that wrath is actually coming from a place of wisdom and understanding. But the wrathful, stern, strong action is what is required. It is the wise thing to do. And so compassion can have that energy of really standing up and, you know, like putting one's foot down and not accepting the shit that's going on. But it's not coming from hatred. It's not coming from separation. It's coming from understanding, compassion, wisdom. But man, is it powerful. So I think we need to look at our anger and see, okay, what is the wisdom here? What is the clarity? Because anger is that has that sharp aspect to it, and then we need to look at, okay, what is this anger telling me? What needs to be done? What needs to be fixed? What actions can I take? But we have to separate that from the more afflictive part where we just hate the white people or hate the politicians and just want to kill them because they're idiots or whatever, you know. So we need to do that work of separating out the hatred part and keeping the wrathful, powerful, just that part, because that's needed. Otherwise nothing's going to change, you know. White dude's not going to necessarily give up their privileges just because people ask nicely. Something, you know, something stern might have to happen, but it should come from a place of compassion and wisdom and not hatred, ignorance.
I just remembered his name. It's Jeremiah Wright. Sorry, Jeremiah Wright. And it was the convocation at Obama's inauguration.
Yeah, I think the only thought that arose in me is like that very distinction between the black, brown, yellow, red, and white is a completely made up one. So that is, you know, it's the whole idea of the white master race and the other races that are inferior. Because if you look at it genetically, you can't find any genetic difference or marker that separates people into races. And within the supposed races, there are more variations than between the supposed races. So by you know, buying into the black, brown, yellow, red, and white, we're kind of fueling that delusion, which is completely not based in reality. So we need to, it's the common humanity that is the only thing that matters. The fact that we have the same fears and feelings and desires and makeup and for that matter, the very same Buddha nature. So yeah, we need to discard the whole idea of race. Okay, I feel like I went on a bit of a ramble there, but is there anything else that is pressing? Otherwise, I think maybe we can potentially end on that note. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I hope something in there was helpful. And I definitely think that if you take any advice from this session, I think it should be Brian's, which is be kind to yourselves. Be super, super kind to yourselves. And then hopefully I will see you next week.
Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I love the points that everybody had made. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll work on being more kind to ourselves. It's very good.
That's the homework. Till next time.